I'm coming from Harvard University. I'm sort of closing shop there, and I'm actually joining Facebook in February. Next slide, please. So just a brief intro about myself. So I finished my PhD in computer science from the University of Pennsylvania in 2011, and since then I've been at Harvard. And my research interest is in, we call the area economics and computation. Essentially, we do economic theory from a computational perspective. And this area sort of proliferated when online internet business, sort of internet economics started to grow. And essentially, algorithms were needed to crunch a lot of data and come up with sort of business strategies, like how to price various items. If you have a lot of different items, how do you crunch some market data to price each of those items or bundles of those items? And also, I also studied some behavioral game theory. So a lot of these things, when you're trying to price things or when you're trying to figure out what should be the negotiated price, or if you're trying to negotiate with somebody, how should a machine negotiate with a human? A lot of it involves human factors. So we also do a lot of behavioral experiments where we get people in a lab and we get them to play sort of economic games, like put $1 between people and get them to share it and see how they do. And based on that, we want to design automated negotiators sorts. And I've also had some industrial experience through some internship and consultancy during the last few years at Google and Microsoft. And some of them are, as I just said, automated pricing. So we crunch a lot of data and price items. In one case, in the case of my project at Microsoft, we were pricing ad contracts. So all the ads that show up on, let's say, the MSN website, how much should we charge for the banner ad right on top of MSN? Versus how much should we charge on the top banner at the top of MSN Sports? Should there be a connection between these prices? Should one be lower or higher than the other? Various concerns like that, and essentially how to do it in an automated fashion. And with Google, my work at Google was a little more intricate. Essentially, they have something called the ad exchange that I'll actually explain. And I essentially dealt with some algorithmic problems, again some strategic online decision making problems in that ad exchange. Okay, so in this talk, I'll start with a history of online advertising. It won't really just be a history. I'll start with the history and go on to the present and sort of a little bit of future, or rather my beliefs about the future of online advertising. And a lot of it I'll go into the market structure of online advertising. I'll go into a fair amount of detail about how these ads are being actually being sold. And a lot of emphasis will go on to the biggest player in online advertising, which is Google. So most of the money made through online advertising, pretty much like well over half of it, probably like 70-80% of it is actually just goes to Google itself. And even then, most of it goes to Google search. So Google search has basically showed that you can have you can actually have the free internet because it looks free to us, but essentially if they can sell enough ads, they can make a very hefty profit, as they are showing right now. And then I'll also go into the basics of ad auction design. So a lot of the reason Google made money, a lot of it actually goes into very common sense rules of selling those ad slots. Rules that are kind of like, okay, common sense in hindsight, but the initial systems actually did not have them. And when Google introduced them into their system, that had a very serious benefit to their revenue, and after that all search engines started following them, and Google essentially created the standards for how to sell ads online. And then I'll go into something that's essentially the present and future. It's advertising in the more, so we now know fairly well how to sell ads on a search engine. We don't really know how to sell ads on pretty much anything else. We are providing so many other services. So Google itself provides Gmail, Google Maps, or YouTube, and so many other services. Everything is free. The Android OS on mobile phones, that's free. Nothing seems to make a lot of money. All of Google's revenue still I'll show you a little bit of breakdown, but most of it still comes from search. And in Web 2.0, Facebook is now like completely ubiquitous, and yet it doesn't really know. So one would think that, okay, everybody's spending so much time on Facebook, it's clearly giving a lot of utility to people, it should be able to make a lot of money out of it. Except that it's a major challenge, because if you say that, oh, you have to pay $5 a month or something, a lot of people might drop off. And if a lot of people drop off, the value of the Facebook to the friends of the people who dropped out kind of goes down. You cannot contact your friends through Facebook. So this can even have a sort of a cascading effect. So there is a serious risk to charging a fee or something. So far they have relied on either advertisement and a few other things that I'll explain. But it's still kind of an open problem, because right now they essentially they were at a loss, and the investors say, don't worry about it, just go ahead and build the product. Right now they're essentially at a no profit, no loss stage, but of course they hope to make significant profits. And a lot of people believe they would, and hence their stock is reasonably valued. And finally, I'll talk about something recently that's happening in that market structure about online advertising called ad exchanges, and which is an interesting sort of a recent business that's proliferating a lot and is generating a lot of new startups and kind of giving it a very, very complex color to this advertising market, and is beginning to look more like the financial markets. Okay, so let's start with the history of online advertising, and first Web 1.0. So in my view, Web 1.0 runs essentially till the dot-com bust of 2000. And even though there is no clear line to it, that's kind of sort of where an approximate line can be drawn. So let's say the internet was invented in 1989. That number is kind of a little arbitrary because it was built in several stages. But let's say the first content sites, you could actually get a connection and go to the internet and have a couple of websites. That was about 1992. And at that time it was completely understood and obvious that if somebody has set up a site, obviously it needs money, so obviously whoever is accessing the site should be paying the site to access it. It was completely, that was the natural thing. And then in 1994, a couple of years after that, somebody thought, okay, let's try out some ads. Initially the ads were thought of as, okay, this could be additional revenue. That, okay, I'm getting some subscription fees, but even though I'm getting those, why not get some more money through advertising? And then after 2 more years, essentially this guy named Savir Bhatia, so it is actually an Indian guy who in this startup called Hotmail, and I'm sure you've heard of it. It's essentially the first popular free email service. He said there will be just ads, and you don't have to pay anything for email. So that was a very, very breakthrough moment, and they got a lot of subscribers, and they were able to make profits. They were able to pay for the servers just through advertisement. And immediately Microsoft went ahead and acquired them. It was like, okay, that's a brilliant idea, I want it. So Microsoft acquired them. Yahoo had already sort of become a portal. Yahoo now launches its mail service, again free, because essentially now that you have free email, nobody can have a paid email ever again. People think that, oh, email is supposed to be free. And then that sort of, okay, it starts running, and then this kind of goes on and sort of like, okay, let's have a lot of free services, and we don't need to really charge money, or we don't need to worry about it. Money will be made somehow. This was the first round of, okay, we just need to build products that people will use, and we don't need to care about how we'll make money. We'll figure out how we'll make money. Why can they think that way? Because investors think that way. The venture capitalists think that way. And they tell them that, okay, just build it. And the guy the software engineer who's building it is thinking that, okay, the investor believes it. He's paying me right now. I like building my product. Okay, well, I don't want to care about the revenue right now. So this goes on for the next 2-3 years till essentially the advertisers also think, oh, it's a fun new market. Let's go in. And of course, in 2-3 years, basically the way they are putting ads right now, essentially banner ads. So just put a big, no targeting, nothing. Everybody sees the same ads. Whenever you go to the Yahoo portal, you see the same ad. And this is not the best way of showing ads. As we now know, people didn't know then. And essentially the idea is that, okay, you're not any better than, say, a national or even in this case a global television network. That everybody, if Sony TV is being shown everywhere in the world and everybody sees the same ad. Not everybody cares about the same ad. So there's no point to showing the same ad to everybody. And so what happens is that, so Yahoo still keeps making profits. And because it's really, even though it's just showing banner ads, it's really became the most popular portal at that time. The most popular website at the time. But overall, for all those small companies that started up, advertisers weren't willing to pay for them, and then they dried up, and that essentially led to the dot-com bust. They all basically fell. The investors also kind of got afraid, they got bored, and things just ended fairly badly. Yahoo kind of kept surviving, made a pretty good revenue, even survived the bust. It is going down now, as you might know, but that will come later. Next slide. Okay, so before Web 2.0, Google sits somewhere between, it comes at the end of Web 1.0 and basically has helped create Web 2.0. And so Google, the search engine, was launched in 1998 and it initiated an ad, so initially there were no ads. Again, the idea was, let's just build a product, let's just get it somewhat popular, let's just try out the algorithms, let's see if people are using it. After that we'll put ads, we'll do something, some money will be made. So the first couple of years they just built they launched the Google INC, the search engine in 1998. A couple of years later they think, okay, we kind of have got a reasonable algorithm running, let's get advertisers. So they launched this ad platform called AdWords, and what they started, the major thing they sort of popularized. There were some attempts before, but never on a big scale, that let's not put banner ads. They kind of annoy people. People don't like banner ads. They don't react well to it. Show them as text ads. They look like the search results. People will visually not get annoyed. They will get curious as to, okay, this is some search result. This is some other kind of result. I don't know what, but some kind of result. And that was a big hit. That was the first big hit. Let's do text ads. And you recognize that that's basically all of these have become the standard now. So on search engine, let's do text ads. And the other thing was the first principle of ad targeting. Because it's a search engine, rather than say content site like YouTube or something, or New York Times, it can essentially just do a very simple kind of targeting, which is very effective as well. That when you search for, show ads based on the word that you're searching for. So when you search camera, I'm going to show you ads related to camera. Not that, whenever you search, the earlier banner ad model is that whatever you search, always see the same ad. Now based on what you search, Google knows something about you. And this is what ad targeting is about. The more I know about the user's preferences, I might be able, particularly about his buying preferences, not anything else, about his buying preferences, I might be able to do a better product placement, which means advertisers will be willing to pay more and essentially generate far greater revenue. Advertisers like to show fewer ads at a higher price if it's going to the right people. And through search, they were able to easily do it, which other content sites couldn't have. And then another thing they went on to do was, so this idea that this ad targeting is not just a gimmick. I'm not just saying that this is effective ad targeting. I will show Google essentially told the advertisers, I will show to you that I am doing very good targeting. And how do I do that? So earlier in banner ads, it was pay per impression. Whenever somebody opened the Yahoo page, the Yahoo portal, the ad was shown, Yahoo got paid. Regardless of whether anybody paid attention to the ad, whether anybody clicked on that ad, doesn't matter. It's just that the fact it was shown, that means Yahoo gets paid. So Yahoo basically doesn't want to take the risk of whether the ad is even getting attention. Google decides to take that risk itself. It says that it tells the advertiser that pay me only when the advertiser clicks on the ad. A very risky thing for Google at that time, because essentially if nobody clicks on ads, there isn't enough data on whether users even click on ads, and essentially Google says, I take the risk. You pay me only if you click on ads. Only if the user clicks on ad, which basically means that he goes to your website and after that it's your domain, it's your responsibility. And advertisers end up willing to pay a lot more per click. Like essentially a very high amount per click, because that's a very direct attention. And when they were putting banner ads, they themselves didn't know what effect those banner ads were having, so they weren't willing to pay much. But the fact that they will actually go to their own site, the advertiser's site, that basically made them pay a lot. And so Google launched this pay per click, and essentially that became the global standard. Like search engines after that had to use pay per click, because advertisers were just not willing to pay per impression, at least on search engines. They had just realized that it's such a better model. If Google can do it, why can't Yahoo? So Yahoo was basically forced to follow suit. Still other sites on the, however, say Facebook or like content sites, newspaper sites, New York Times sites, they haven't moved to the pay per click model completely. They use sort of a combination. You pay something for being shown and pay something more for if your ad gets clicked. Essentially, but it also shows that essentially they are not confident that they're getting the right ads at the right time. Going to pay per click is sort of the golden model, because the golden goal, because that essentially signals to the advertisers that we are very good at showing ads, which essentially means advertisers will also be willing to pay more for those ads. So it's generally a good idea to move towards pay per click if you have good models. But even then, the concept of banner ads, the ones that don't do any targeting, Yahoo kind of kept going on it because they made fair amount of money till about 2004, and that was the end of basically blind banner ads. Okay, and then Google also went on to provide its own ad targeting, basically statistics and technology. It provided access to it for other content sites. So essentially, think of, let's say, at that time, even somebody like New York Times, and I keep mentioning New York Times because they are actually they usually are a very good partner of Google. So New York Times at that time wanted I also want to use your ad targeting technology, whatever your findings are about, say, New York people like this kind of things, or San Francisco people like those kind of things, or during the day people like these ads, during the night people react to those ads. Whatever Google is learning, other sites started saying that, okay, can you provide us some sort of access to those technologies and essentially place the ads on our website, but you do it. I don't know how to do it. Why doesn't the Google engineers do it for us? And that created AdSense. It was a different startup called Oengo, and they acquired it and essentially built upon it. And AdSense essentially charges a commission. So it's still the pay-per-click model, but it's on other sites. So New York Times will start having these ads by Google. You may have seen on like a lot of blogs and stuff. It used to be very common at one point, ads by Google. And essentially it's still pay-per-click, but most of say 70% of the money went to the person who wrote that blog, and 30% went to Google. And this also generated significant amount of revenue for Google. Next slide. Okay, I'll come back to Google in a little bit, but let's go on to the Web 2.0. So, what is Web 2.0? It's mainly characterized by the growth of social media, but it's not just that. One thing is social media, people essentially creating content themselves, like regular people creating content that other people are going to see. That's a major aspect of it, but it was also enabled by a very important thing, namely the Google search engine. The search engine became way better and smarter, that when you search something, you actually find what you want. It gives the impression that the web is organized, which it is not, but having a good search engine gives that impression. So more people start using it because they can actually find what they want when they go on the web. So the search engine is key to it. And then of course came the various kinds of the social media, these contributions by not professional people but amateurs. And so for example, blogging was the one. So let's see how they might pay for their time. They're putting in some time and effort. How would they, for it to be sustainable, there needs to be some sort of a revenue model. So for blogging, it was mostly personal motivation. That was the first thing. Personal motivation, people just want to write and sort of spread their word. That's blogging. But they also got some ad revenue on the side if they were doing it as their full-time job. So they were getting ad revenue through things like AdSense. And then came but bloggers cause a very weird problem for the newspapers. So initially, a blogger could read a news article, let's say an investigative journalism piece about the Gulf War or something, and essentially just copy the content of that material and write a blog piece of his own. And now nobody cares about reading the paper. Everybody with Google just get the information by reading the blog. So the newspapers are going to lose basically eyeballs, subscription, everything. So the newspapers decide that, okay, to compete with this blogging and basically things going on the online so easily, we might as well go online ourselves. Even though we can't really charge money for it, because everything on content has been free for a while now, we can't charge anything for it. So free journalistic content. And now we are getting into a very slippery slope. That journalistic content is anything but free. It requires reporters, journalists, people who are editors, major expenses. For example, if the Helka wants to run a sting operation, it needs significant investment into it. So if it can't sell that news, how is it going to how is it going to get the money for future sting operations? So to think about that, how have they made money in the past? So there were newspapers, and people bought newspapers every day. A newspaper arrives at your doorstep. But there is something more to it. The subscription fees has never been the majority of their income. It has always been ads. The number of classifieds on a regular newspaper is actually very large. And even other than the classifieds, you often see huge banner ads covering half the newspaper. And that has been typically for pretty much all newspapers, that has been over 50% of their revenue. So they haven't been exactly that subscription dependent. However, they need people to get that paper for advertisers to pay their money. If nobody is looking at those ads, if nobody is subscribing to that physical newspaper, the advertising revenue is going to fall itself. So that was the problem. And in the future, in the online world, in some sense, that's what we need for, say, free press to survive. That it's not going to, because some money might come through online subscriptions, say charging $5 a month for unlimited access to the newspaper site or something. But it really has to come through ads, as it did for the physical newspapers. And it is happening, but right now, essentially, the revenues are total revenues are kind of falling. I'll describe that a little later. And, okay, so the next one is, of course, Facebook, Twitter, and the dead predecessors of Facebook, namely Orkut and MySpace. And does anybody use Orkut anymore? Anybody here? No. It survived in India for a long time. India was one of the last bastions of Orkut till basically. And Twitter, of course, it has nothing but basically like some sort of a text message that gets broadcast, and yet it's basically the next big phenomenon. It's all based on the fact that people who are using it are generating valuable content. The service is just a platform. It's the content being generated by the people that creates the value. And again, these are being paid for by ads, but in bracket, at least that's the hope, because Facebook has reached a no profit, no loss stage. Twitter is not even looking to make profits or any revenue right now. The hope is that it will figure out later. It's looking at Facebook and it's basically watching how Facebook makes its money, and then it hopes it will copy Facebook somehow. So, and Google is not showing them the way, because Google doesn't really have a social media. It failed with Orkut, it failed with Google+, so Google doesn't really have a play in this market. So it's basically Facebook who has to figure it out right now, and for the others to follow. And an interesting, again, completely user-generated content and very good quality is Wikipedia. But the founder of Wikipedia has decided that he does not want to go towards ads, nor does he want to build it into. So both Google and Facebook. So Google has made it. Facebook is thinking of making it. They want them to be actually big software giants. Build the next product, and then the next product, and then the next product. Keep building new things, not just focus on. So Facebook's intention is not just to have Facebook, but other things. Google search, the Google guys always had a plan to build other things, Gmail, Google Maps, whatever the next idea comes in, Google Voice, Google Chat, they keep making new things. The idea is that we always keep making, so they want to be software giants. For that they need significant profits. But Wikipedia, basically the guy says that okay, he doesn't want profits, he doesn't want to, obviously he can't have a loss, he just wants to run it as a non-profit organization, and he runs it through donations. So if you guys visit Wikipedia quite a bit, once in a year there is like a month-long sort of a donation campaign, and it will keep showing up on every Wikipedia page you open. At the top of it, we are a non-profit, we are very good people, please give us some money. So, but they have been successful. People do give them money. I give them money actually. I'm very pleased with them. I use Wikipedia a lot, so I do pay them. I do give them some money. And finally, there is if most businesses could do what the last example does, there wouldn't be much to worry about. So Amazon is a big software company that has at its core, it is actually selling something. So it has some margin out of the items that it's selling. So it doesn't need to care about ads. And Netflix as well, it's basically just selling items. It's basically giving you movies. And people do think that they are supposed to. Well, not everybody thinks that, but enough people agree that they should be paying for movies online. And they also believe that if they're ordering a TV from Amazon, they should be paying for the TV as well, or whatever item they're ordering. And so they have these companies have a direct revenue source. Okay, so in terms of online advertising, so essentially advertising has allowed this proliferation of free services, free or below cost services, and they're the primary revenue source for two of the big guys who are essentially providing currently the biggest free services. So in 2011, these are 2011 numbers, 96% of Google's revenue came from ad services. And that's, by the way, Google's revenue itself was about $38 billion. Its total expense was about $30 billion. So it had basically a profit margin of 30% over its annual cost. So which is pretty healthy. But most of the $38 billion has come from ad services. And even within that 96%, that 80% is coming just from AdWords. Just the search ads and nothing else. And the AdSense that I was talking about provides about 15% of it. And YouTube right now doesn't really, it's still almost a loss-making thing. It makes like $1 billion, but that's about the cost it takes to run YouTube as well. So it's kind of reaching a no profit, no loss state. But basically search has a huge surplus. Search pretty much costs about the same to run as YouTube, probably a little bit more, but of the same order, a few $1 billion. But it generates $30 billion. It generates close to $30 billion. And that money is being fed into all these free services. Google Gmail, Google Maps, the Android OS is free. The first example of a fairly commercial OS that also is free. And all basically because they're able to make money through ads. And these services themselves still don't have neither they are free and they don't have an ad revenue either. Similarly, in 2011, about 85% of Facebook's revenue, which is about 1/10 of Google, by the way, 3.7 billion, came from ads. 85% came from ads, and 15% came from its other attempts that it's making. And the number 15% is actually grown. In 2009, that was only 5% of its revenue. Now it's 15%. So what is it doing? But its ad revenue is also growing, to be fair. But it's also trying other things. So one thing is Facebook games. The games that various people play on Facebook. It is a weird phenomenon. I don't know who does it, but people apparently do. Essentially, you can buy things. So let's say if you are playing a game, you can pay $1 to get a new sword in the game or something. If you're fighting some sort of a demon, some special sword for $1. You could get it through a lot of effort, or maybe it's hidden under some rock. But if you're frustrated with that game and you're unable to move to the next stage, essentially it's selling cheat codes. It's getting you addicted to the game, and then it's selling cheat codes. And Facebook keeps a commission from that, from basically those games making money by selling cheat codes. And also the apps are pretty standard. Like games are themselves apps, and there are more multi-purpose apps. Some of them charge money, and Facebook again keeps a commission on them. But that has been significantly growing. It's now 15% of its revenue. Okay, so looking sort of forward, internet services. So the younger people are clearly spending more and more time in front of the computer and not in front of TV. So TV was the main source. So at one point we had books. Then books basically went away in terms of entertainment for the bulk of the people. And then it became television. And now television is going away and is being replaced by the internet. And so again the same question sort of comes in, that how do we pay for this entertainment? People again don't like paying. Basically we can't really charge people like for every minute that you spend be getting entertained by these services, you pay something per minute. The moment you do such things, people start thinking, oh, is it really worth it? And you don't really want to lead them to that on that path. It seriously reduces consumption, or good or bad. And also for traditional venues, ads have been a major part of the revenue. So, and people seem even more averse to subscriptions or basically paying for internet content compared to their motivations in television. So television people seem sort of okay with pay channels, or at least they have become okay with pay channels. And maybe that will happen for the internet. But right now, especially led by Google, everybody believes that everything is being built out of thin air, and essentially everything is free. So, and that mindset is there in the people. They feel that nothing should cost anything, no service should cost anything. And so ads are very critical. Also, so that's essentially sort of the kind of the positive impact of ads, how critical ads are to basically the survival of this free internet. But there is a negative impact that's also being discussed a lot, that this ad targeting. So as I said, ad targeting, the basis of it was this search engine showing you ads based on what you search for. But now Google has made things, if you have noticed, you have accounts on Google and you get personalized search. Along with personalized search results, you also get personalized ad results. So the ads are also personalized based on your browsing history. Whatever you have searched on Google over many months, years, whatever it wants. And not just on Google. It's keeping, there are now tie-ups that are happening, and Facebook, you might see a lot of things like, a lot of sites saying connect with Facebook. A blue sort of, you don't have to create a separate account, just click connect with Facebook and they will take care of everything. Very convenient. At the same time, Facebook gets to know and see what you are doing on this other site. So Facebook gets a much more essentially broad, clearer picture of essentially your entire browsing history. Like if Connect with Facebook becomes absolutely popular, essentially it will get your entire browsing history. It will know as much as your Firefox or Chrome browser knows. Which in terms of, basically it's a little creepy. You search for a camera on Google, next time you show on Amazon and they start showing you cameras. Sure, it might not even be harmful. It's kind of useful that it's kind of showing you the good items that you might actually want. Yet it's obviously kind of creepy, and people are creeped out a bit by it. Also, there is a bigger fear, a bigger risk is that with so much information going into a few hands, like Facebook having so much information, Google having your mail, your search, your basically a lot of the scans of your passport and whatnot. People are storing things online. They're going into a few hands, and right now they are saying they're secure and everything. But A, you can have leaks. B, they can be sold in the future to some other company if their business model fails or something. So you never know where this thing ends up, like long into the future. And it can't be ruled out that they could be used for malicious purposes. And this brings in a lot of worry whether we should have significant legislations, laws to sort of restrict these things, force these companies to sort of break up into different things, different entities, so that essentially nobody has a full picture, and so on. On the other hand, having all the entire picture helps in showing more valuable ads and generates more revenue. So there is a clear conflict there. Next slide. So, okay. So this is sort of the history, present and future of online advertising. Now go into a little bit technical detail about how are these ad slots being sold? Who decides the prices for them? How does the advertiser even approach? How does the advertiser get to know what the price for it? How does this whole system work? So traditionally, the offline ads, so essentially like newspaper or TV, television ads, they're essentially sold through negotiations or just posted prices. So let's say ZTV will say that, okay, I want this much money for this 30-second slot when this 9:30 television serial is going on. A lot of people watch it. I think this should be a fair price. And based on that, if it always gets this filled up, it might think of increasing the price at some point. It might reduce it. But it's kind of based on market research, set up some prices. If on the other hand, if some large advertiser is kind of huge and is buying a lot of slots, they might be able to negotiate a bit. They're like, hey, I'm buying 10 of them. You should give me a 10% discount or something like that. But essentially, it's fairly basic. Things are decided well in advance. You'll be negotiating in September what ad you will be showing in December. So often like those kind of 3-month advance contracts. And so very offline, very nothing basically real time, like quick and computerish about it. And even now, the display ads on this content site, so Facebook, most of Facebook's ads are essentially sold through this model. Most of ads on MSN or the Yahoo portal are sold through this model. Negotiations, setting prices, and just sell these, make contracts. Oh, you'll get 10,000 impressions or 1 million impressions, and you will pay $1,000, something of that sort. And these kind of contracts, and it will be Yahoo's responsibility or Facebook's responsibility to actually deliver 1 million ads in December to this guy. And they can put sort of targeting things that, oh, I want to show my ads only to people who are, on Facebook they can say, I want to show it only to people who are single. Or they might say, oh, I want to show ads only if based on the IP, this guy seems to be just from New York or the New York region or the Northeast region, something like that. He should be an urban guy, something of that sort. But there could be constraints of that sort. But essentially they are still kind of in that negotiation mode. That's why they have big sales team and so on. And the exception to all this is the search engine ads. Search engine ads have very little sales. It doesn't go through any such thing. It goes through something called auctions. As I said, that's what has proliferated the ad revenues. That's what still generates essentially most of ad revenues, more than half the ad revenues on the entire internet. Search ads, Google search ads, let's include Bing search ads. And those are being sold through auctions. Those are not being sold through prices. Nobody is setting the prices for these things. They are just being sold through auctions. And I'll now go into essentially what kind of auctions are being run. Okay, so here is a sort of a sample Google search result. 2 ads on top, a few on the side. And so how does Google AdWords decide what ads to show? So essentially AdWords is, so what does AdWords provide? So if you look, so you can actually type Google AdWords, it will go to you can go to the website, you can log in, and so it will say what kind of keywords do you want to bid on, how much do you want to bid per click, again it's not per impression, per click, what is the maximum you are willing to pay per click, and finally it also allows to specify a per day budget. So you can say that, okay, I want to pay 10 cents per click, and I don't want to spend more than $10 in the whole day. So essentially don't get me more than 100 clicks in the day, because essentially I have other things to do. I just can't keep spending money on it, on ads. So it also provides that. So these are sort of the 3 main things it provides. Nowadays it provides things other than the target set of keywords, such as location and things like that. Location has become a very popular vertical. So these are called sort of features or verticals, like set of keywords, location, things like that. What are the criterions that you want to specify, that you want to actually are interested in showing your ad on? And so essentially when a Google search user types in a keyword, Google AdWords sort of collects all the keywords, all the ads that are connected to this keyword, people who have bid on this particular keyword, and now it wants to run an auction. It has a set of bids. This is one selling basically one ad page, and basically with some 5 ad slots or something. And essentially figure a set of bids. It has to decide who gets the top slot, who gets the second slot, who gets the third slot, and who pays how much. That's what it has to decide. So, and this is the auction rule. So what does it look like? So now I have to go a little bit sort of through a little bit economic theory. Let's go with so let's say, so as I said, it's pay per click, but let's simplify things a little bit. Let's say there is only one slot, and let's say this user is going to click on whatever ad there is. So there is no basically pay per click and pay per impression is the same right now. And now, so who should get this slot? The person who should get this slot, essentially the value. If you want to sort of maximize the value, you should give it to the guy with the highest bid. That kind of makes sense. It maximizes the guy who basically has the best value out of this ad of this page gets to put it ad. So okay, that seems pretty good. But how much should he pay? And that's where a little bit of subtlety comes in. So most of the earlier models, like Yahoo, the way Yahoo was selling it, the way even Google sold it in the first year or so, was this first price auction. Basically, whoever wins pays whatever he bid. If you bid 50 cents, you are the highest bidder, you pay 50 cents. Numbers. And then a slight modification is second price auctions. The second price auctions, which are essentially saying that okay, the top bidder will still win, but he won't be paying. He will be paying something potentially something less than what he bid. Let's look at it through an example and why this paying less could be a good idea, even for Google, not just for the advertiser, but even for Google. So as an example, suppose there is one slot, the user is guaranteed to click the ad, and there are only 2 bidders. And they are true bids. So if they were their true values, or how they what they think the value of this ad is to them. To one of them, they value it as 50 cents. The other one values it at 25 cents. Now, if they actually say report 50 and 25 respectively, what happens in the first price auction? The first bidder pays 50 cents in the first price auction, but he pays only 26 cents in the second price auction. In the second price auction, he has to pay just 1 cent above the second highest bidder, just enough to keep him on the first slot. He only should pay that much. Why are we doing this? Because otherwise, in the first price auction, the moment I win, say let's say I don't know anything, I bid 50 cents, I won. I will immediately think, why don't I reduce it to 49 cents, 45 cents and see, and maybe I'll still win. I mean, there should be some gap between me and the next guy, and I will get the same thing at a lower price. So I have a very clear incentive to basically explore this zone, and this can create a lot of instability. At one point, I will basically keep exploring and go below 25 and suddenly lose, and then I have to again go up. But the second guy might also start strategizing the moment he wins, and this can create this used to create very unstable markets. And this kind of just people going up and down, just sort of exploring things all the time. And the optimal strategy, if he knew the second bid and the second bid wasn't responding, would be just 26 cents. He would just bid 26 cents. That's the sort of optimal point in the first price auction he's looking for. However, that sort of suggests that the second price auction is good. Second price auction is charging him exactly 26 cents. Whether he bids 50 cents or 45 cents or 40 cents, he is being charged exactly 26 cents all the time. So he doesn't need to worry whether the second bidder is bidding 25 cents or 20 cents. If the second bidder bid 20 cents, he would be paying 21 cents. Whatever is essentially the fair price for him, if he knew all the other bids, whatever is his best strategy, Google is kind of playing it internally for him. It's making it the best price for him. So,
one question.
Yeah.
Is this an advertised strategy by Google saying that they would go for the SPA and not SPA?
Yes.
It is.
Yes. At one point,
if it was not, it would not help any.
Yeah. Google puts a lot of effort. Advertisers saying that we have very fair auctions. and you will basically you will get your best value if you speak the truth. The auctions are way more complex than this simple second price auction, and it no longer reveals the exact rules, but it keeps saying that don't worry, it is fair. It is basically, if you try to strategize, you won't find a better strategy than saying the truth. Okay, and it's called truthfulness by obfuscation. So essentially these are the game theoretic so what I'm pointing out are essentially game theoretic concerns, that advertisers are strategic. They are trying to minimize their expenses and they still want this ad slot. And essentially, if you provide a truthful strategy like the second price auction, where you don't need to lie, where the advertiser doesn't need to lie, it gives a more robust system. Because advertisers don't have to spend a lot, like employ people to figure out strategies and like have a whole strategic team, it reduces cost for the advertiser to put ads, and hence more advertisers will show up. A flower shop in New York is not going to employ a sales team, and he'll be very unhappy if he feels he's being overcharged. And basically he will not employ a sales team, he'll either overpay or he'll drop out. There's a good chance he'll drop out. So Google gives this fairness guarantee to them, that we will be fair to you. And there's also a little bit of a thing that if people actually strategize, you can't really get basically you won't actually get 50 cents out of that first price auction in that example. People will figure out that, oh, I don't need to actually pay 50 cents. I need to pay something around 26 cents, if not 26.30. They will figure it out soon enough, and you won't actually get the 50 cents. So what's the point of basically making them unhappy, making them figure things out, and then not making money yourself? You're just taking sort of more effort into the system without increasing your own revenue. Okay, so now I'll go into a little bit of sort of the complexities that come in. Obviously, I won't be able to describe the entire Google auction scheme. A lot of it is not public even, but a few more ideas. So one thing is that I said the assumption that I made, that there was only one slot instead of multiple slots, typical multiple slots, and it was guaranteed to be clicked. So two major assumptions, right? And so let's say, how did Google solve this? Suppose I have 5 slots. How do I do it? It did a very the second price auction was essentially decided by an engineer. It wasn't decided by an economist. It was basically an ad hoc idea that was like, oh, this seems pretty smart. And the same guys basically thought that, okay, what is the natural extension to 5 slots? The first guy should pay the second highest bid, second guy pays the third highest bid, third guy pays the fourth highest bid. This is actually not truthful. You can actually analyze this, and there are basically situations where you can lie and benefit. It doesn't carry the guarantee that you will get the right thing. But it actually has some sort of weaker sort of truthfulness properties that makes it a reasonable idea. Definitely still better than first price auction. That people immediately got. That even though this may not be like perfect, it's more strategy proof than first price auction. First price auction is just kind of stupid. And essentially, the more natural, the economic theory way of getting a truthful auction is not saying that, oh, the first guy pays second price, second guy pays third price. It's actually everybody, all those 5 guys who are getting the slot, paying just enough to be in those 5 slots. So essentially, just the 6th highest bid. It should be the 6th highest bid, just the minimum amount to win that item. That's all. Anything more, and you are essentially creating strategic loops. Okay. So the other thing is click-through rate. And this was a major thing started by Google along with pay-per-click. And this sort of was the need of the hour when they initiated this pay-per-click model. That if I'm really not getting paid for that impression, but I get paid that 50 cents or 25 cents, whatever the bid is, or whatever the second price thing is, only if the user clicks on it. The fact that it has a high bid doesn't matter if it's a horrible ad that nobody's going to ever click on. So that introduced this idea of click-through rate. It's the probability that a particular ad will be clicked by a search user for that particular keyword search. So the probability of Google actually getting that 26 cents. What is the probability that Google will actually get that 26 cents? Right? And this is a very complex prediction problem. This is basically the thing that keeps getting fine-tuned in the Google system, this number between 0 and 1, the click-through rate. as to basically based on where this guy is, what I know about this guy, his basically starting from his date of birth to where he grew up to whatever it can get on you, it will use that, your browsing history, your search query, your location, it will try to basically guess what is the likelihood you will click on that ad. And it uses basically, and it was a huge team trying to figure this out. And it keeps changing. And this is basically the Google secret sauce. Google seems to be doing it better than everybody else. Advertisers seem to believe it, and hence it is. So, so because of this click-through rate, you can think of an effective bid as basically the reported bid times the probability of being clicked. Because that's the money that Google the expected amount of money that Google will make. So if the click will happen with, say, 2% probability and he's bidding 50 cents, the effective bid is really 1 cent. In that search, his expected amount of money that he will make if he shows that ad is basically 1 cent.
Just one question. This click-through rate, does it depend on the attributes of the viewer, or does it depend more on the attributes of the advertiser, or the domain of the advertiser?
And everything. Both and everything. It's a combination of, it's actually a combination of which ad slot it is, because there are 5 slots. It's a combination of which search keyword it is, which user it is, and which advertiser, which advertiser it is, and what is the exact ad.
Even the text of
the ad. It keeps exploring it and figuring out like how well this is likely to perform. And so all that goes into that.
Do they publish any details on how they calculate this thing?
No. This is completely, and this gets modified right away. And it has very complex machine learning things that most people, even inside Google, don't really know what it's ending up doing. And it has a lot of pieces to it. So many pieces built by different people. And so now it basically gets this CTR modified second price auction, where you essentially the guy with the highest effective bid wins. This bid times the CTR, whoever is highest wins, and essentially again pays something that allows him to win. He pays again the minimum bid that will keep him as the highest effective bid, that will allow him to win the auction. He will never pay more than what's needed to win the auction. That's the guarantee. So the CTR, okay, so let's see. The assumption has been that in the CTR modified SPA is that an unclicked ad has no value. Something that also inspired the pay-per-click model, which is not entirely true. There is some value to the ad being shown, but this is essentially a very, as long as you assume that essentially the advertiser also believes that unless it gets clicked, it has no value. This is again a truthful auction. Again, sort of the same kind of reasoning. You are just paying the minimum amount to win the slot, but it also has other than being truthful, it also has a very critical point. It's kind of going towards a revenue maximization angle by putting CTR into the factor. So there is a high bidder cannot win, and also the other thing it's doing is avoiding unfit ads. If I might bid $100 on a keyword that has nothing to do with my company, nobody's going to ever click on it. So what's the point of it? Why should Google show it? And this CTR weighting did that. It essentially threw out ads that were not suitable. Just because somebody bid on it doesn't mean I should show it. And they also put a sort of essentially qualifying threshold. So like your CTR should be at least something. Sort of currently at the order of like if I show it 1,000 times, it should at least get 1 click. That's kind of the sort of the ballpark, that minimum threshold that any ad, basically if your ad is not getting that, your ad will never, it will be shown maybe your first few thousand times just to test it out, but after that they will just stop showing it. So advertisers also are motivated to build more effective ads, which was not happening in the previous model because there was nothing. You were just winning based on bids, not the quality of the ads. Google makes quality of ads very important. Not just it's good in the short run because of the pay-per-click model, it's also good in the long run because users don't get bored or like annoyed by useless ads. The ad quality is very important for that. Okay, and the final slide on basically saying that what I have told you is basically a very toy thing. The whole system is far more complex than that. The main thing is that different slots. So I said as if for every keyword and every advertisement there is some click-through rate, but that's not true. It also depends on which of the 5 slots I'm getting. The first 2 slots, which essentially show up on top of the search, those are the real valuable slots. Those have the high click-through rates. And the other slots essentially have very low click-through rates. So it's not just a click-through rate of the advertisement for that keyword, it's also click-through rate is a function of the advertisement, the keyword, and the slot. And that essentially complicates the auction quite a bit, but you can sort of again extend these principles that people should pay the minimum amount to hold on to that slot. Okay. And other concerns are essentially that, and this was kind of done about 3 years back, that okay, we need to have kind of consistent ways of rotating ads. So like, okay, just because this search is being done right now, I don't show all this guy's 100 clicks in the first hour of the day. Nobody really likes that. People like things being rotated through the day. And people definitely have better value for things if that's the case. So, and also the same ad should not be shown to the same user just because he's typing the same keyword again and again, because if he didn't click it once, he probably doesn't care about it much. So this kind of rotation and things also go in, and hence makes these repeated auctions kind of related. You have to think about what you have done in the past, which ads you showed in the past, that needs to factor into the current auction. Okay. So finally, the advertising on, now I move on to basically social networks. The main focus will be on Facebook. So the trouble with Facebook is that it doesn't have this kind of strong search query signal that okay, this guy searched for a camera, let's show him a Canon ad or a Nikon ad. Social networks don't have that. They have something else. They have a lot of data about what you are doing and everything, but they do not have this real-time signal, oh, this guy is looking for a camera right now. It cannot know that. So it doesn't know when to show you a camera ad and when to show you some other ad. So they haven't figured out how to rely completely on this pay-per-click model. So they are still relying on pay-per-impression, but they're also going into a they're also putting in a pay-per-click charge that, oh, they're text ads and they'll be clicker. You pay for being shown, but if it gets clicked, you pay some more. That means I got my targeting right somehow. But they're still not very good at it. Basically because they don't have those strong real-time signals. And then Facebook, on the other hand, is trying something, but Facebook has realized that it can't just basically copy Google's search engine strategies into the social network. It has to figure out what works on a social network. It's a different kind of system. It needs different kind of strategies. So it's trying some other sort of targeting and techniques. And here is the technique I just want to point out. This is the one that sort of is currently pretty hard. Facebook is trying it as a very aggressively. If you ever check Facebook on your smartphone, on the web page, I don't know if you have noticed it, but you are surely getting it. So what you are getting is, so there is this news feed in Facebook. When you log in, you see a bunch of things. This friend A did this, friend B did this guy got married, this guy likes this website, likes this service, he bought a TV, he's eating at this restaurant, whatever. People keep basically posting their entire life on Facebook. So all these kind of things. And Facebook came up with this interesting idea of newsfeed, and people really like it. That it's this kind of, just like the search engine results are kind of magic and shows you exactly the things you like. The Facebook newsfeed is supposed to show you the things that are sort of most relevant to you, sort of your things, important things that your closest friends are doing, or some really big event in one of your friends' lives. And that's how it's supposed to show you its choice of newsfeed. However, unlike the search engine results, Facebook, this newsfeed is no longer organic. It's no longer an impartial algorithm running to give you the best things that you should see. It's basically inserting ads in the middle of it. So by calling it something called sponsored posts, to be fair, it's still pointing out in slightly basically gray letters that it's a sponsored post. So every 5 posts or so, it will show a post which is sponsored post. It will look pretty, other than that gray letter saying sponsored post, it will look pretty much like a regular post. It might just feel a little less relevant to you. It might just say some friend you have never talked to and maybe never met, he's just a Facebook friend, like Coca-Cola, and that shows up in your newsfeed. So that is actually an advertisement that's not part of the organic algorithm that's deciding the rest of your app. It's basically advertisement. It's PR ad. Coca-Cola is paying Facebook to do that. Why is it doing this? Well, it needs to make money. It's not. It's again basically like the users are not happy with it, but eventually it needs to make money. And the beauty of it is, so people don't pay attention to ads on the right side. People basically don't even notice that this is an ad. They say, oh, this guy likes Coca-Cola. Yeah, like, why am I saying this? But okay, yeah, maybe I should drink a Coke. So essentially, people are not basically conditioned to ignore that ad. It's appearing right in the middle of the flow, and so people are paying attention to it, and hence advertisers are willing to pay money for it, and hence it's becoming a significant revenue source. On the mobile app, there is no right side. There is only basically just a scroll. So on that, the only thing that you see is basically the sponsored posts. And yeah, essentially this kind of like Coca-Cola, this guy likes this camera, this guy likes this new sort of business. Like essentially a lot of likes are the main sponsored posts. But it can also be a little bit complicated. Say this guy is dined at this restaurant on this particular date. Maybe that date is a month back, but it still shows up in your post because that restaurant is paying Facebook money. So things like that. Just giving preferential treatment to various posts over others. Okay. And finally, I wanted to speak a couple of words about this sort of new development called ad exchanges. So far we have seen basically Google having its own ad sales team, its own ad targeting, its own figuring out what goes on what ads, everything being done by Google. Advertisers are supposed to directly approach Google, and Google decides what to do on Google's own sites. There was this AdSense which allowed people to go to allowed other sites to get into that Google's advertiser set. That was the only sort of thing. Ad exchanges are essentially taking that AdSense idea to a whole different level. They're essentially mediators. They're nothing but mediators. They do not have a site like a content site like Facebook or Google Search or anything or New York Times. They are not the ones. Those are the publishers. And then there are the ad networks. Say Google AdWords is an ad network. It's like representatives of advertisers. Because advertisers don't really want to spend that much time, right? So they hire representatives. But essentially, it's connecting these publishers on one side to advertisers on the other. And it's just a middleman. It's helping in these negotiations and contracts and so on as a middleman. What it does is it lets the publisher not have its own sales team. It can go through this ad exchange, get the help of the ad exchange to sort of sell to multiple ad networks, not be dependent on, say, just Google's ad network. What if Google is being unfair to you? The Microsoft ad network should also be available to you, so that you can basically as a publisher get a sight of the whole market. Yeah.
There is something like Google advertising Zero. I've heard of it.
Sorry.
If you know something. Zero. ZEDO. It's just the same as Google Ads.
It's the same as Google AdWords, and it puts ads on which site? On Google Search?
That I don't know, but I just heard of it.
So there are many. So it cannot be exactly as Google AdWords, because Google AdWords is the only one that has license to put ads on Google Search. It does not put ads on anything else. It's only on Google Search. But for a lot of other websites, right? Say who gets to put ads on Facebook or say New York Times, some news site or some content site. There are a lot of startups and companies which do that, and essentially they collect advertisers, and they are essentially these ad networks that I'm talking about, who have a bunch of advertisers who are managing a bunch of campaigns, and they're going to put a lot of ads on a lot of websites. But nobody other than Google AdWords can put ads on Google Search, and Google AdWords itself does not put ads anywhere other than Google Search. It's a complete pairing. Because it's essentially one of the old businesses that's working so well, nobody wants to tamper with it. But everywhere else where we're still not making that much money, it's all still an open market. So, going back to the ad exchange, so essentially it's basically trying to create this open market. The publisher has access to all ad networks, the ad network should have access to all publishers, and the exchange sort of wants to provide a neutral framework platform. It doesn't own a publisher, it doesn't own which is not entirely true anymore because Google bought one of them, and there are serious lawsuits going on because of it. But essentially it's supposed to be a neutral platform. It's supposed to be not partial to any publisher or any ad network. Okay, so I was showing this picture about the ad exchange. So what the ad exchange is getting this the sort of the new exciting part of it is the real-time system. So when and this is how crazy the system is getting as well. Like if you want to feel creeped out, this is why you should be. When you click on, say, a New York Times page, a particular page in New York Times, immediately a lot of things are happening. The simple download is basically the New York Times article, but it's making insane, your browser is making an insane number of calls to all kinds of servers at that same moment. So what it does is the following. It first goes to, okay, so that basically that page has a redirect in the part where it wants to embed an ad. It says go to basically the ad exchange I'm connected to. And this ad exchange is going to, so let's say it's Google's DoubleClick. So DoubleClick was an independent ad exchange. Google bought it about 4 years back. And I actually worked on DoubleClick when I was there. And so now, Google essentially, so the DoubleClick gets contacted. DoubleClick immediately contacts various ad networks. Say it is obviously talking to its in-house AdWords. It's talking to Microsoft ad network. It's talking to Yahoo's ad network. There are a lot of fairly large ad networks which are immediately able to. So this is all happening in the few milliseconds when your page is apparently downloading. They all get contacted based on, and they are getting contacted with your information as to who you are, and based on that they can decide their bids. So the ad networks decide how much they want to bid and send this to the Google DoubleClick, send it to the ad exchange. So publisher, basically your browser contacts the ad exchange contacts the ad networks respond with bids to the ad exchange. Ad exchange now runs an auction immediately with these bids and decides the winner, and essentially tells basically some server kept by Akamai or somebody that okay, this guy won, send his ad to this particular user. And then Akamai basically sends this ad to your browser. And all this is essentially happening in a few hundred milliseconds. Essentially the bottleneck for this is considered the sort of the user patience is considered to be about 200 to 300 milliseconds. So everything must happen within that. But it's these many calls. And if you look at one of the things that if you're looking in a browser, it will keep saying waiting for some site, and that site name will change radically after it will. Suppose you're opening Cricinfo or something, waiting for Cricinfo.com, but then it will start flashing all kinds of websites. The reason for that is basically doing that. It's going to all kinds of these advertisement-related servers and it's sending information, eventually getting the ad. And it's doing all this, and so it's essentially calls out, runs the auction, and eventually the user basically there is a final thing. Eventually, the ad sends the ad to the user. Okay. So this is the real-time bidding thing. That's kind of considered hot. So the vision is that these ad exchanges will sort of create open markets where small publishers can come in and join. You can start if you have a clever idea of ad targeting or some clever strategies. You can open sort of an ad network, get some advertisers behind you, and just sort of join this big pool. You don't have to be Google or Microsoft or somebody like that to be a major player in this thing. If you have a good strategies, you can basically make it work. And the ad exchanges are supposed to allow that. And so the real-time bidding also allows essentially for very rapidly adaptive strategies. Based on what happened in the last 15 minutes, I can decide what bids to make in the next 15 minutes. And this real-time, so now it's beginning to look more like basically those hedge funds in the financial markets, which is exactly their business. They learn quickly, they react quickly, and they keep doing that based on these automated strategies. And there are a lot of startups currently that are doing this. Like they all have their own proprietary targeting algorithms. They all believe they can get the best clicks and the best conversions and the best actions. They are all going to the advertisers and saying, "Come to me, give me your campaign, and I'll give you the best, give you the best value for your money." And it's all basically it's creating this whole complex market, which sort of creates a fair ground and a lot of players, and hopefully leads to a lot of development of good, effective strategies. That's essentially the reason why all these guys are opening up to ad exchanges. So Google acquired DoubleClick, Yahoo acquired Right Media. So none of them actually, both of them were startups that they bought. And AppNexus is still a startup that's still running on its own. It's the biggest. It's bigger than Google's DoubleClick's real-time part. So AppNexus is solely real-time bidding. It's the biggest one right now for that. And Facebook last quarter launched the Facebook Exchange. So what it does is basically an exchange with only one publisher, but it's open to all ad networks. So you don't have to just go through the Facebook display ad sales team. You could go to some outsider. That outsider can be buying in this real time, can be buying things, buying ad slots on Facebook that did not get sold by the Facebook sales team. So essentially it's trying to increase its sales. It will sell things that through its own system, through its own advertising team and advertising sales team and engineering team and so on. But it's also opening up the rest of whatever it can't sell through these things to basically the open market as to like whoever wants to bid on it, please do and basically pay me. And so Facebook exchange, Amazon is considering opening up an exchange as well. Seems like basically a standard thing to do. Okay, so in terms of future challenges, so online revenue right now, the reason so Google stock is sky high, its market value is this market capital is about close to $300 billion, whereas it's basically makes 1/10 of that in a year, and its profit margin is even much smaller than that. So it makes $9 billion in profits. It's valued at $300 billion. So the reason is this. That the $9 billion has been growing at a crazy pace of basically its revenue is growing at over 30% a year. So no industry basically essentially has, like none of the old industries can have this extreme growth of 30% a year. And in that sense, these are still acting as successful startups, and hence their stock values are so high. Facebook stock value is entirely based on this revenue growth. It doesn't even make profit right now. And this growth trend, particularly with social media advertising, even if search ads revenue saturates, the social media advertising should grow because it's still pretty basic right now. And of course, things will get creepy. Ad targeting can raise privacy concerns as well. At the same time, in terms of good things, it's critical for basically for free journalism to exist. Journalists need to get paid. Right now, like New York Times is losing revenue every quarter. Their stock values are falling. Every quarter is going down. So the internet is causing that to them. They had a stable business. They have this new sort of distribution system, the internet, and they don't know how to create a business model out of it. They are hoping that Google will figure it out for them, or the Google Facebook combo will figure it out for them. And they are trying in the sense that online revenues are steadily growing for these content sites like newspaper sites. But the offline revenues are falling faster right now. So the overall revenues are actually falling pretty much every quarter. So the hope is that things will be figured out eventually, and the online advertisements can basically keep up with the loss of offline advertisement. Not happening right now, so that's basically the future challenge. And also there should be, for other internet services, hopefully, as well as newspapers, the other ways of monetizing should also hopefully will start generating some revenue. People will subscribe to monthly New York Times or Wall Street Journal, and Facebook may be growing its, as I said, its transaction services like the payments for the games. It has recently launched something called Facebook Gifts. So Facebook Gifts are basically, so when you see, and this might not show up in India, it's doing it very selectively right now because it also has a shipped item. So what it does is, so I actually saw this. So I have a friend, my friend had a birthday, and she essentially said say happy birthday to this friend, and also said send a gift to her. So I click on that. Essentially, I can actually send a physical gift to that friend from whatever list of chocolates and whatnot they have, and essentially that friend will be notified, and she can give her address and essentially whatever information is needed, and Facebook will ship that item to that friend, which means it will get a commission out of it. And it's basically selling items. It's becoming Amazon Marketplace at that point. It's getting sellers, it's getting people to buy things, and essentially making a commission in the middle. It's trying to be Amazon's marketplace. But right now it's calling it Facebook Gift. It's not saying send a gift. You can technically send a gift to yourself, but right now it's not putting it as such by calling it a gift. And the items are also of that sort, chocolates, this, that. You never send chocolates to yourself, usually. And also another thing is like all these app markets are being sold, and Android, even though it's a free OS, at least the official hope is it will make money through selling apps and essentially get a commission of it. But right now it's very low. For basically a $1 app, Google basically makes 3 or 4 cents. That's not really going, and Android is full of free apps as well, so it's not really going anywhere right now.